On today's episode of Locked On Angels, it's Fanmail Friday, and you asked, do you think a new manager and a new GM are inevitable for next year? All that and so much more. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you want to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can make every moment more. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started.
Happy Friday to you, and thanks for being here for this Fan Mail Friday edition of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Mike, we've been fans of this team for years. I say it all the time now. We've been fans before Artie Moreno. We'll be fans after Artie Moreno, because that's how fandom works, ladies and gentlemen. You stick by your team, right? Hey, on today's show, we're getting to all of your questions for Fan Mail Friday. You guys sent in some really great questions talking about the team building, the young core, the current status of the Halos. We'll get into all of that. But first, Mike, we had some questions regarding GM Perry Minasian and what his future with the team looks like. Let's get into those questions.
JCano89 on Twitter asked this question. What areas and problems has Perry Minasian not addressed over the last couple of years? I know Artie is heavily part of the problem, but will he hire another go all in yes man if Perry is fired? What type of GM does this organization desperately need?
You know what I'm thinking of in terms of Perry Minasian, what he's not addressed, Mike? It's obvious, I think, to everybody. It's the free agency. And I think that has everything to do with kind of having his hands tied, trying to fit within Artie's budget of not going over the luxury tax. I know they did it briefly last year when they made all those trades, but here's the thing. Coming into the season, they were not over the luxury tax. I understand that Artie Moreno wanted to sign Trey Turner. He thought, hey, how would Trey Turner work for this team? Would have been a great signing, and we would have loved to have Trey Turner on our team. But the problem is, if you make a Trey Turner signing, you couldn't address all the areas that the Angels needed to address last season. That was the outfield, the infield, the pitching, all that stuff. And so they had to spread the money around, and that's under the limit of Artie Moreno's budget. However, this coming into this year, I know the budget was rolled back, and Artie Moreno said as much, but in terms of the free agency market, he really swung and missed on that Robert Stevenson deal. Not a good look. I know he also has Jose Cisneros, who is injured, quote unquote. Phantom IL stint, but he hasn't been very good. And you even have Gio Zuniga, who's on the IL right now. That was a pickup from St. Louis because he was on, believe waivers. They were just able to get him from St. Louis. But bringing back Matt Moore, I think was a great move. I think this Adam Simber was a big risk because he was hurt last year. That's turned out to be a great thing. And then Luis Garcia has been hit and miss, but they just did not do enough in free agency. Now, the areas that I think that he's improved in are international free agency. I think they got back on the market in the time that Perry Minasian has been GM. I also think that in terms of the minor leagues, they've hired more coaching up and down the system. And I like the hire of Ron Washington. So I think that the consistency from the top to the bottom is starting to be there. I also really like the coaching staff that was brought in on behalf of Ron Washington. But it all starts with Perry and his hire of Ron Washington at the end of the day. But there are certainly a lot of areas that have gone unaddressed. But comparatively to Billy Epler and even Jerry DiPoto, I understand that Perry Minasian has a lot of flaws. But comparatively to the GMs that we've had, I think he's put the Angels in the best position that they've been in relative to where they've been over the last few years. And so that's why we haven't been as harsh on Perry Minasian as a lot of people have. I think that he's addressed areas of need. I am encouraged by some of the young guys in the minor leagues, even though the Angels will continue to rank last in the farm system. Sam Blum had a great article just yesterday about where some of the prospects in the Angel system have they grown, have they regressed, things like that. So it was really insightful. Check that out. If you're subscribed to The Athletic, you can subscribe for like $1 a month, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're a new subscriber. But that is to say, I think that there are some encouraging signs, some good developments. At the same time, he's not without his flaws, but relative to previous GMs, I think that he has done a good job. Mike, what kind of GM does this organization so desperately need?
Yeah, this is his final year, so he won't get fired. If he gets fired, he gets fired before the end of the season, which I don't think will happen at all.
So he has that phantom extra year that Billy Epler got, and then they fired him anyway, which is weird.
Yeah, so I think I could see him actually going one more year just because Wash has a 2-year deal, and that's how Artie works. Artie works with just small bites, right? And so I really think that this team needs a Bill Stoneman type. He was the guy that really helped put together that 0-2 team. And before that, I've always been a big advocate, John, for Dave Dombrowski type. He's the president of baseball operations in Philadelphia. And he is somebody who has always found a way to find young, controllable players and also trade away some young, controllable players for the right players for whatever team he's on. And so the Phillies are in a good position because of Dave Dombrowski. So I think we need somebody who's been there and done that. Here's the problem is that they're going to have to wrestle with Artie Moreno. And Artie has really been a benevolent dictator when it comes to being in charge of this team, right? Like you do what he wants and that's it. And so if you bring in somebody like a Dombrowski or anybody else that you can think of that has some experience, I think that it's going to be really difficult. I think it's going to be an arm wrestling match. And I don't know if a lot of GMs, male or female, are going to come in here and want to take this job unless they know and can get in writing that they have full reign to do whatever is necessary to try to help this team to win.
Well, and if you look at the history of who Artie has hired, Bill Stoneman was already here when Artie got here. And that's why the Angels have had so much success, because it was a guy who knew how to do the job, and he succeeded in that role. But since then, Mike, Perry is a first-time GM. Epler was a first-time GM. DePoto, first time. Even Tony Regan's first-time GMs, and it's all because Artie can push them over. You know what I'm saying? It's not a hard-nosed Dombrowski type. It's not a hard-nosed Bill Stoneman type. It's guys who have never had the role of GM before. Plus, Dombrowski is president of baseball operations. The Angels don't even have a president of baseball operations. It's kind of combined in that GM role. And they even got rid of Alex Taman, who was Perry's assistant GM. Now, that's probably a good thing because we know how much his spreadsheet analysis was interfering with the play on the field. At the same time, these are all guys who have had the job for the first time. So Artie does not spring for anybody who's going to require a good contract. And that's a problem. And it has everything to do, again, going back to the spending on this team.
Yeah. Cody J. Perez, 1995 on Instagram said, is our GM checked out since it's his final year of his contract? Johnny, I don't think he's checked out. I think that GM PM is operating within the constraints that he has been given. This is the sandbox. This is the playground. Here's the boundaries. And I'm going to do the best that we can to try to figure out how we can win right now. And I think that that's why the narrative has been, we're trying to win right now. We're trying to win right now under these constraints. We could rebuild, but our owner doesn't want to rebuild. However, he only wants to spend this amount of money in order to compete. And so I'm trying to do that. And I think that that's what Perry has been operating under since he got here. And that's why he's operating the way that he is right now. It would have been great to see him go and get some really big names. It would have been great to see him really fill out this roster with some major league caliber players, but he doesn't have that ability. He doesn't have that opportunity. I guess it's probably a better way to put it. He has not been given that by Artie Moreno. So I don't think he's checked out. I think that he's very much dialed in to the level that he's able to be dialed in. And if you compare him to other GMs, to the Dodgers, just down the 5, like that's going to be unfair because the Dodgers can do kind of whatever and whenever they want to do things.
Yeah, imagine letting your baseball people do baseball things. How about that? Making baseball decisions for your baseball team. Mike, I don't think he's checked out because he is still wheeling and dealing, even though the moves are not spectacular and jumping off the page. Look, Kevin Pillar has been a revelation for this team. And he got out of a bad situation in Chicago with the White Sox, who are actually starting to rattle off some wins here. That's a fun thing.
Can you hold
go ahead.
Hold that thought for just a moment, because I had something. I don't want to forget this. You know what's interesting about GM is he's gotten really lucky with the Kevin Pillars, Adam Simbers of the world, the Hunter Stricklands of the world.
This year, most certainly. I mean,
this year he certainly had a lot of luck, because in years past it hasn't been that way. But this year, man, can you imagine if this team was where they were last year as GMPM was selecting these players off of the waiver wire? Like, we'd be in a whole lot of trouble. So the fact that he has 3 or 4 wins is great, because that's helped this team. And that's what GMs need to do. They need to be good in those moments. And finally, GMPM has been good in those moments. He's gotten really lucky, I guess would be the right word to say.
Really is lucky.
That's been kind of a fascinating piece to his work. Okay, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, like I said, he's bringing in Luis Guillorme. He had Willie Calhoun signed on a minor league deal. And you're right. It's paid off in the sense that these guys are the guys you hope you never see on your major league club, because they're obviously filling in for injuries. And that's where we are right now. But the fact that Pilar and Calhoun are maybe one of the best middle of the orders in baseball right now is kind of silly. But that's what you want out of those backups is guys who have been there before. In the past, he's gone for guys like Magneuris Sierra, who didn't have a lot of major league experience, who's apparently playing football for Alabama or Arkansas.
Is playing for Arkansas.
Oh, it's Monte Harrison. That's right.
Yeah.
He was also
28-year-old walk-on.
Yeah. He was also somebody who didn't have a lot of major league experience when we picked him up. So the fact that he got major league guys is great. Mike, how about this? You touched on this a minute ago. Doggius on Twitter said, this year seems like a lost cause. Do you think a new manager and new GM are inevitable for next year?
I think that would be really stupid, honestly, to have a new manager and a new GM. I know that Ron Washington has a 2-year deal. I think he comes back next year. And I think that Perry Minasian comes back next year as well. I think it would be really dumb to make any sort of moves, because we're kind of in the middle of this neutral, no direction kind of world. And the only reason why they would make a move is because the owner's like, hey, we're neutral. We need a new direction. The problem is that he has to know that he's part of the problem and then bring in somebody that's going to be a solution to that. I don't think Artie's going to go after anybody. I think he's going to keep Perry. And I think we're going to see Ron Washington back again next year, because he does have one more year.
I am nervous about the draft coming up in July, because I did see Keith Law of The Athletic do his predictions on where the Angels might go. And his prediction and the chatter is the Angels are going to try to find somebody that they can rush up to the majors again. And with their top 100 picks that they have, especially when they're picking 8th, they don't need to do that.
No.
And if Perry Minasian goes down that road again, I'm going to be severely disappointed in him for doing that. I understand it in years past, because they were trying to win with Trout and Ohtani on the team. But look, you can't do that now. And there's no reason why you should be doing that now. And so I really hope that's not the case come the draft in July. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen every single day. The Angels are playing the Rangers tonight, 5:05 Pacific time. It's going to be Tyler Anderson versus old friend Andrew Heaney. You can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels. Mike, does it bother you that Andrew Heaney is a World Series champion?
I want, if he's going to be old friend, I want old Andrew as well. So please pitch like old Andrew so that we can hit him. That's all I care about. He can have a World Series ring. Go ahead. Just pitch like old Andrew. That's what I want.
Hey, coming up on Fanmail Friday, you asked, do you really see the young core actually developing on this team? And can they develop on this team that's in the pits right now? We'll get into that conversation coming right up.
Johnny, we have a new Locked On Everydayer to Locked On Angels. They're called Supply House. They're sponsoring today's show. Excited to have them on board. Here's all about Supply House. You can order supplies from the website that's made for skilled trades. Find thousands of parts from hundreds of brands in just a couple of clicks at supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com gives you 24/7 access to a huge selection of plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies. Plus, you get fast delivery from anywhere in the U.S. And if you need help with any order, you can get industry-leading after-sales service from their friendly and knowledgeable customer service team. And you get to talk to a real person, John, every single time.
That's what it's all about. I can't stand the robot phone calls, so I'm so glad that Supply House has real people behind the phones, Mike.
Especially when you're dealing with HVAC and plumbing and those things. You can't talk to AI. You can't talk to a computer. You need to talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, and that's what I love about Supply House. And there's great news for plumbers, technicians, and contractors. Being a pro has its perks, Johnny. The trade industry professionals can join their free Trade Master program for free shipping and serious discounts on every single order. Over 100,000 pros already trust the Trade Master program to deliver results. 100,000 pros are already a part of that, and you can be a part of it too. Apply for your membership today and get a competitive edge over everybody else. You can order at supplyhouse.com/TM. Save money and time when you order online. Order plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies from supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Everydayers, if you haven't done so already, it's time to check out Locked On Sports Today. It's available on YouTube and the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's covering all the biggest stories of the day across the sports world, 24/7, 365, from the local experts of Locked On to our national shows, people who actually care about these teams, the way that Mike and I care about the Angels. You'll find that across the sports world with Locked On Sports Today. Again, it's on YouTube 24/7. It's on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. And speaking of your team every day, the Angels are playing their first series against an AL West team this season. It's going to be against the Rangers, 5:05 Pacific time. You can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Johnny, let's continue with Fanmail Friday. Nick Velakis on Twitter asked this question. Do you think the Angels are in a quote-unquote quiet rebuild? They just picked up that pitcher from the Pittsburgh Pirates. Is it Roams? I can't pronounce that.
Roamsy
Contreras.
Yes, it's like Ramses from what's the Nacho Libre? Roamsy.
Yes. He's 24, once a valuable prospect, and they've made other similar moves. Could they be rebuilding, but still touting the win now narrative because Artie doesn't want to reduce fans and marketing? John, what are your thoughts?
Well, first I want to say Nick Vlahakis, because we used his name before on our show, and he said, thanks for getting my name right. So I just wanted to make sure we got it right again. Mike, yes, it's a quiet rebuild. And I think the writing is on the wall when we've already had these discussions of you and I talking about what Ron Washington said the other day about these guys are learning how to win. They're growing. They're developing. That's not what win now teams do. The teams like that don't learn how to win. They already know how to win because they're win now teams. And so when I see the Angels make these kinds of moves, look, I understand that Contreras was let go so that they could make room for Paul Skeens, and they have a really great pitching staff going. But this is once a highly touted prospect. He got some starts. He had a really great year with the Pirates at one point. Now he's in the bullpen. He's had some regression, of course, but it seems like the kind of move that you take a risk on when you're in the position that the Angels are in. The Angels are certainly not going to say that they're rebuilding because of the exact reasons that Nick brought up. Artie doesn't want to reduce fans and marketing, and you also don't want to discourage somebody like Mike Trout. Now, Mike Trout isn't stupid. He knows the Angels' situation, and he sees the writing on the wall. But I do believe that the Angels are trying to find pieces wherever they can that might help them in the future. And so I think Nick is right on in the sense that Ramsey Contreras is going to be somebody that they maybe give a second look to. Maybe he might be a Jose Soriano type where they say, hey, you got starting stuff. Let's see how you do. But immediately coming over to the team, I think he's going to be out of the bullpen. Mike Carlos Risen on Instagram says, do you guys think the Halos are going to be sellers at the trade deadline? Greetings from Cuba. Hey, that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's
Carlos,
awesome.
All the way in Cuba. Thank you for being a Locked On Everydayer, my friend. Mike, what do you think? Sellers at the trade deadline?
CU and CUBA. I Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. They should be sellers, and they should sell all of the one-year contracts. They should get rid of those guys and see what they can get back. They have to learn their lesson from not trading Shohei Ohtani. They have to learn their lesson from maybe buying at the trade deadline last year. They need to maybe perhaps refill this minor league system with some of the players that they gave away last year. And so I would say yes, even if they're at 500, John, I would say yes. Even if they're close in the race, I would say yes, because I think that they need to really build for the future, even though it'd be great to see them do something this year if they go on some sort of run. But I think they need to start building for the future. And so, yes, sell at the trade deadline.
Do you remember how good the 2022 Orioles were with their young guys, and they were in the race?
Yeah.
And then they sold, they sold off some pieces, and everybody went, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
You guys are right there." Well, we all see how that paid off in 2023.
Right.
And look, I'm not familiar with all the pieces they got during that trade deadline. However, there was a sentiment of, come on, guys, you're right there. Why are you trading pieces away? Why aren't you going for it? But it certainly paid off the next year for the Orioles. And I could see the Angels. Look, I don't think that they're going to be in the race come the trade deadline, but I do think that it would be the responsible thing to get rid of those one-year deals and to move on from some of these pieces. And look, not everybody is going to jump off the page. Carlos Estevez, as a closer, probably doesn't work for another team. But you remember what the Braves did with Raisel Iglesias. They moved him to the 8th inning because they already had a closer. And Raisel thrived. And I could see the exact same thing happening with somebody like Carlos Estevez. Maybe he doesn't need the pressure of closing. Maybe he does need to be a setup guy or what have you, whoever a team decides to use him. But there's always value in relievers. There's value in Tyler Anderson, who's got a year and a half left. There's value in Luis Rengifo, who has the same amount of time left. So I could see that happening with the Angels at the deadline. Mike Joe Ortiz says several potential trade pieces with team control have started performing well, like Sandoval, Rengifo, Adell. What players do you feel are worthy of potentially extending versus trading away for prospects, especially given that many prospects don't really pan out at all? Who would you extend versus trade away of some of these guys that are starting to perform well?
The three names he brought up, that Joe brought up, Sandoval, Rengifo, and Adell, I wouldn't trade because they have a lot of time to be on this team. They're still fairly young, and I think that they're still developing. So I would lean on my veterans. I would lean on my one-year contracts, as I mentioned before. I don't think I would trade any of those young guys. I think I would allow that to be the core of this team and to fill and to backfill a lot of what we traded away last year. And then if you bring up like a Caden Dana or a Barrett Kent and they end up performing really well, then you can then decide, hey, I think Sandoval is expendable potentially because you now have, 6 or 7 starters. Although with this Angel team, you need a lot of starters because they have a lot of injuries.
Yeah. You know what I'm interested in seeing? I want to see how Adell's stats look at the end of the season. I don't think they'll trade him. I think they'll give it a full season so that they can assess what they have in him. And I think he deserves it. I think he deserves a full season with the opportunity that he's been given. This one's for you, Mike. I want to know, and so does Zach Neto Believer on Twitter, how does our young core of today stack up against the young core of the 90s? What do you say?
I was really excited about the young core of the 90s when they first came up. And I know that it can be difficult to judge them versus judging this team now because the ones before actually had some success, and we've seen them go on to put up really great numbers, and then some of them were part of the 02 team. And so it's kind of an unfair judgment. However, Gary DiSarcina and Zach Neto have a lot of similarities. That's really exciting. JT Snow, when he first came up, and Nolan Schanuel have some similarities, maybe a Wally Joyner type. They had more power than Nolan Schanuel, but there was an excitement there. And then young catchers, right? I mean, Benji Molina was somebody that everybody was really stoked on and really excited about. And then
he was great on the broadcast the other day as well. Yeah. He really said, I want to be back with the Angels, and so that was exciting.
Yeah, and I think you look at some of the young pitchers as well, like back in the day in the 90s, like Langston, Finley, Abbott. Those guys were ready to go, and our pitching staff today, young, hungry, they just haven't performed, and that's been the tension right now for this starting rotation.
JT Hartley on Instagram says, do you see the young core actually developing on a broken team and an empty franchise? I say yes, because they're in a situation where they get the playing time that they need. I know a lot of people are like, where's Mickey Moniak? Well, they face a lot of tough lefties. And
Right.
yeah, you want to expose him to some lefties, but I think right now they're still trying to win. So I think Moniak's the only one who hasn't really gotten his fair share. However, I will say this. I think that the young core actually has the opportunity to develop because you have to go through the highs and the lows, and they're going through the lows right now. And it's giving them a chance to learn. Again, they're learning, they're growing, they're learning how to win. That's why this is not a win now team.
Yeah.
But it's the perfect opportunity for these young guys to get the experience that they need. It's the perfect opportunity to learn how to lose, learn how to win, learn from your mistakes, like overrunning second base or not sliding in at home. And we've seen that. And I think, and I still stand by this, I think Ron Washington is the right guy in the managerial position to help this young team navigate what's going to be and what already is a difficult season.
Well, one of our Locked On Everydayers is FanDuel. They're a great sponsor of Locked On Angels, and we're grateful for them. And it's winner take all time right now in the NBA and the NHL. They're right in the middle of the playoffs, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to vote and to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. Got the election on my mind. And you can maybe bet on that if you'd like to, but you can bet specifically on NHL and NBA with FanDuel. You can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. When you go to that website, they're going to know that you came from Locked On. So make sure you visit that website, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook.
Getting into our last set of questions for Fanmail Friday. A lot of questions kind of on the current status of the team. This one comes from Marco on Twitter. Should we keep Pilar and Calhoun in the lineup? If so, who would they replace? It's so nice to see someone get hot on the Angels for a change. Mike, I want to share my thoughts. Then I'll kick it to you. But The fact is, these are the guys that, again, like we mentioned before, you pick up because you're going to need some depth.
Yes.
And it's great to see them perform. I don't think it's going to last forever. And I certainly don't believe that Pilar and Calhoun are going to go on this insane run for the rest of the season. So they're carrying the workload right now until we get somebody like Trout back, until we get a Sano back. I do think that once Sano comes back, I think Calhoun and Pilar stay on the team because I think at that point, Kyron Paris becomes expendable. You can send him back down to the minors. Look, it's been great to see Kyron Paris have a moderate success at the major league level and seems to be doing better than he was in AA. So I don't think that once these guys come back, you're going to have to see Pilar and Calhoun out of the lineup. I think once Trout comes back, that's when that becomes a question of, well, who stays and who goes. At this point, I'm just glad that those two are thriving, Mike. But what are your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I don't think that you keep them in the lineup when your healthy guys come back, because the reason why you signed them was so that they would come and fill in when the healthy guys are not healthy. And this is what you want them to do. You want them to perform. And so good news, they're performing. But I don't think that it's going to be a long-term thing. I think it's only going to be a short-term thing because you want your young guys back in the lineup, the guys that you want to develop and be on this team for the future. You want them in the lineup right now.
There is a space too from when Aaron Hicks was here. And so you could easily keep Pilar in the Aaron Hicks spot that was until he got let go. So there is room. I think once Trout comes back, there's a little bit of a question there, but at the moment there still is room for both these guys to be on there. Mike, Logan O'Hoppe Truther on Twitter. Good man. He's a truther. How do y'all feel about the fact that Angels fans don't feel safe, even with a 6-run lead? I think that Royals-Angels game last year messed up a lot of people. Well, I wouldn't even say last year. I'd say this year when the Angels have a huge lead and then they fall apart with Matt Moore and Adam Simber and Luis Garcia. The guys you're trying to count on out of your bullpen blow that huge lead like they did the other night. How do you feel, Mike? How does that make you feel when these guys come in?
I'm as uncomfortable as this person is, the Logan O'Hoppe Truther, and everybody else. I'm super uncomfortable. I mentioned it on this show a couple days ago. I would be more excited to see some of the younger guys, the Ben Joyces and the Eric Torreses and the Mason Erlas in that spot, learning how to save games, to hold games, and to keep games close at the major league level, rather than the veterans who we brought in to make sure that the game is saved, make sure that the game is held. I would rather see the young guys struggle through that than the major league veterans struggle through that. I'm not confident. And that, I said it maybe a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about like, what's the key to the future for the Angels this season in order for them to continue to be on a upward trend? It would have to be the bullpen.
Yeah.
And so far, the bullpen hasn't been great. Now in May, they were great. And then they fell apart in that game where they, against the Cards, where they gave up a bunch of runs, 8 runs in the inning. And so I think that that's who we have. I think it's still early. I know it's May, but I think that maybe we're getting a lot of the craziness out, and perhaps we can get more consistency once we get into the summer months and watch the Angels put some winning streaks together. It
was great to see Matt Moore have a better outing, and he wasn't getting helped by that umpire at all. That was Larry Vanover was terrible the other night. Mike, Jay Guzman 89 on Instagram said, when is it time for the Angels to walk away from Rendon?
Yesterday. I think it really needed to be yesterday because, and I say that not as an angry fan. I just think like the guy's hurt again, and I know that it's got to be a bummer for him. And I'm actually bummed for him because he was performing and the way that he handled it. I'm bummed, but this just seems to be a consistent thing. And I know he's a lot of money, but we're going to pay for him either way. And so I get they're keeping him because we're going to pay for him either way. And so if we can keep him around, he's not necessarily getting in the way of anybody. Let's keep him around. If he's not got a cancer in the clubhouse, let's keep him around. But if you're going to try to win, if you're going to try to have some young guys come up, I think you got to move away from him, perhaps maybe trade away his contract or pay it down so you can get him off the roster.
Yeah, I just don't see anybody who could possibly come up and take his spot, especially with Cole Fontenelle getting hurt. He's going to be out for a while. So there really isn't a need to walk away from Rendon at this point. Because like you said, they're still going to pay his contract, whether he's here or he's at home chilling, like he currently is.
Yeah.
That's what everybody likes to say about Rendon. He gets to collect his paycheck from home. How about this, Mike? I love this Twitter name. Ron Washington Pep Talk on Twitter says, how y'all dealing with the stress of Angels baseball? What do you say?
The no expectations philosophy that we have had since the start of the year and even before that has really been helpful, even though it's frustrating to watch them lose these games. It's been frustrating to see the Angels talk about how they're going to win now, but I've really entered this with no expectations. And so it's almost like, well, at least Logan O'Hoppe is learning how to become a better catcher, and Schanuel is starting to hit, and Zach Neto's playing some great defense. So I've looked for those little things, which have been really, really helpful and beneficial for my fan heart.
Yeah, I hang my hat on what the young guys are doing, and seeing Logan O'Hoppe struggle for a while and then finally get a hold of a home run again. I mean, that's the stuff I want to see. I want to see him work through those things. I want to see Jo Adell get a full-time opportunity this year. And ever since he's been able to start most games, that's why we're seeing the Jo Adell that we get. I want to see him make good plays in the outfield because we know that his defense has been bad in previous years. I want to see Zach Neto continue to grow. At some point, I want to see that leg kick go away, Mike. I think I'm team anti-leg kick at this point because he hit that home run the other night on 2 strikes and he took the leg kick out because it was 2 strikes. And I'm like, what could you do when you're not doing that leg kick? You know what I mean? I just want to see what happens and maybe we'll get there. And that's what the season is about. And like you said, no expectations. I just hang my hat on the fact that these young guys are learning and growing. Again, they're not a win now team as much as they want to say they are. But I am excited to see the development of these young guys. And to be honest, the stress of Angels baseball, it is frustrating when they hang with the Phillies and then Estevez blows the save.
Yes.
But Estevez is not a future part of this team.
Right.
He's done after this year and possibly by the deadline. And so it's not like the young guys are blowing it. They're actually fighting and getting back into this game. They didn't make the call for the suicide squeeze the other night. Those young guys fought and got back into the game. Schanuel taking the walk, Neto hitting the double, whatnot. It's not on the young guys for the most part. There have been problems, but at the same time, it's not on them.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We play the Rangers tonight, 5:05 Pacific time, and we're at Texas. We're at the Rangers, so it's another road game. Angels are better on the road, by the way. They're only 2 games under 500 on the road, so this might actually be a pretty good series for them. Cross your fingers. Catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, find today's show, hit that like button because it puts our show in front of Angel fans who might not know about Locked On Angels. It's really helping us out. Mike, what do we have on deck for Monday's show?
We're going to recap all 3 of those games against the Texas Rangers and hoping that we can talk about a series win. I know we're playing the West and the Rangers are struggling, and we're playing Haney and Lorenzen, I believe, are the first 2 pitchers that we're fighting against. And so that could potentially go in our way, or they could potentially become Cy Young against the Angels. We'll find out and talk about it all on Monday on Locked On Angels.
Looking forward to that. We hope you have a great weekend. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Monday.
All right, what is it again? Vlahakis?
Vlahakis. Nick Vlahakis.
The H. I got to pronounce it.